Is Tage Thompson a center or a winger? We'll debate it, whether it even matters, how much of a difference there was this year, and much more on Tage Thompson coming up on the Locked On Sabres podcast.
Your Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in. What's up, everybody? This is the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. You can check us out on our YouTube channel. You can watch the show there. If you like us there, like and subscribe. And be sure to hit us up on our Locked On Sabres text line. Join subtext.com/Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the show is presented by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. You can turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. Sneaky Joe DiBiase here on a Thursday. It is game night for the Rochester Americans. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. We'll get more into some individual players on today's show. We'll actually talk about Beck Malenstyn in a little bit. We'll talk about two players. I don't have a lot to say about Malenstyn. I have a little bit, though, and that'll be coming in the latter half of today's show. But much of today on Tage Thompson. A couple of critical questions about Thompson as we grade each player from the Sabres from this past season. And on Tage, how did this year go? Offensively, defensively, injury risk, because, of course, that's been a story for Thompson. And then we'll get to what position is Tage going to play next year? And does it even matter? How actually important it is, I think, is something that I want to get to about the benefit of Thompson showing his ability to play at an elite level now at center and also on the wing. So lots of Tage Thompson talk coming today on the show. At Sneaky Joe Sports, you want to follow me on Twitter at Locked On Sabres, of course, for the podcast account. And then on Blue Sky, I'm at Sneaky Joe. You can check us out there. So let's jump right into it on Tage Thompson, who I think the story of his 2024-25 season was a return to elite. He was an elite goal scorer, one of the elite offensive players in the NHL in the 2022-23 season. The 23-24 season shows up. Everyone's expecting the same thing. It doesn't go that way. But we all believed, I believed, that it was due to the injuries that he had, and he rushed back because the season was going off the rails while he was out. Sound a little similar to the guy we talked about earlier in the week, Rasmus Dahlin. This year, the season was going off the rails in 23-24. He rushes back, and he honestly didn't play much of that season healthy at all, and it ends with 29 goals, 56 points, and a disappointing campaign for somebody that was in the Rocket Richard race the year before. So, again, the thought was injury. That's what's held him back. That's why he had the season that he did. I wasn't 100% sure of that, though. I think there was a debate, and there was a question coming into this year of, what is Tage? Is he the 47-goal scorer from 2 years prior that was one of the best players in the league? Or is he a really good player like we saw in 21-22, his breakout season where he scored 38 goals and had 68 points? Was he closer to that and the 29-goal scorer that we saw in 23-24? Which is it? And I thought it was closer to the 40-goal guy, but I wasn't sure. And that is definitely what he proved all year long on this team. And you could seriously make an argument, even though he had fewer points by a lot, 22 fewer points than he had in 22-23. You could argue this was his best season, his best campaign with the Buffalo Sabres. The ice time rising to a career high, 18:45 per night. Didn't play as much on the penalty kill, but of course, lots of power play minutes and 5-on-5 time for Thompson. 44 goals, 28 assists, 72 points. And the 44 goals is the biggest thing to break down here, because it's not just about that total. To me, the where I would want to make the argument, if I could, that Thompson just had his best season was if by looking at even strength goals. Thompson led the National Hockey League in even strength goals with 37. That is the first time in Buffalo Sabres history ever that a player on this team has led the NHL in even strength goals. McGillney didn't do it when he scored 76. Rene Robert never did it. Perreault never did it. Rick Martin never did it in the seasons that he scored 50. Danny Gare came close, but he didn't do it. Jason Pominville also just barely missed in 2007. No Sabre had ever led the league in even strength goals, and Thompson just did that. And that's something to get to about the power play. Is it impressive? It also is a point of concern for the team, I would say more so. But Thompson being able to get to that number without producing on the power play, 7 power play goals for Tage Thompson was the fewest in this 4-year breakout window. I kind of want to throw out the first 4 years of Thompson's campaign or season career where he barely plays. He's in and out of the lineup. He's in Rochester for a little of it. He plays a bunch of games in his first season with the Sabres and doesn't do all that much. Throw all those 4 seasons out. Let's go in the last 4 years. If you look at Tage Thompson, 7 goals on the power play. That was the fewest. And way fewer than the 20 that he scored in 22-23. But I think what you saw is a player that is capable one day of scoring 50 goals. And even though he didn't get there this year, he was close. Remember, there was that little run at the end where I thought he could. He didn't get to 50 goals. I think what he proved, if he could score goals like that at 5-on-5, and they figure out how to make the power play even average, then he's a 50-goal scorer. Because the way to make that power play average is just to free Thompson up. He's been very easy to defend for the last 2 seasons because there's no threat on the other side of him. And the Sabres, I think, have tried some things, but between Seth Appert and before that, Matt Ellis, they just have not had the answers. And if they can figure out a way for Josh Norris to slide over there on the right, stay healthy, have a one-timer of his own that's a little bit dangerous, and just create that little bit of space for Thompson to get off those one-timers on the power play, and his 7 power play goals can go up to 15, then I think you're talking about a 50-goal scorer. So A+ for Tage Thompson, in my opinion. Looking at some of his advanced numbers, that absolutely is backed up. Evolving Hockey, check out their website. A lot of good numbers. Goals above replacement. All right, where did he rank in these categories? 98th percentile offensively, the 36th percentile defensively. So defensively, sure, it wasn't great by this one metric. 96th percentile offensively, by the way, which absolutely puts him in the class as one of the elite forwards of the NHL. And if you want to say this was his best year, compare this chart, 98th percentile offensively and 36th percentile defensively, to his chart from 22-23, where he scored 47 and had 47 assists. That year, same offensive number, 98th percentile, goals above replacement, but the 4th percentile defensively. Now, some of that was the Sabres style, of course, and Don Granato, wide open hockey, up and down the ice, but I think you could seriously make the case this was Thompson's best year. And I would make that case. So that was a great year that he just had. And 37 even strength goals, 10th most goals in the NHL now over the last 4 years. The story for Thompson this year was reasserting himself as, I am going to be one of the best goal scorers in this sport for the coming years. That 47 goal campaign wasn't a flash in the pan. What he did this year was prove to everybody that I'm here. You have to think about me for the Rocket Richard, and you got to put me in Hart Trophy odds, and you got to think about me as one of the premier goal scorers of the league. Also, Team USA. Hello, Bill Guerin. You got to think about this guy. You have to put him on the team, really. I cannot believe he still wasn't on the Four Nations team. And to me, it will be the crime of the century if he's not on the Olympic team. I don't think there's any chance he's not on the Olympic team. So that's what he did in 24-25. Now, the other part of this conversation that we're about to get to here, so stay tuned, is was it different when he was playing wing versus center? And how does that benefit the Sabres, and what is that to manage for Lindy Ruff going forward? The fact that Thompson now can play 2 different positions. That's coming up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. This is presented by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and wondered where did all my money go? Because between dining out and online shopping and entertainment, it's easy to lose track, and that adds up quick. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, stay on the same page without all the stress. Be sure to take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Do it. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, we're talking Tage Thompson, our exit interview series, as we kind of shoo out the 24-25 Sabres and we move on to the 25-26 Sabres. Let's look at what Thompson's season was and specifically about the position that he played. He had been a center for, in large part, 3 seasons. Don Granato, still want to give Don Granato a ton of credit for making this player into what he is today. Thompson gets a lot of credit too. I wonder, you got to wonder if he ever gets here without Don Granato and the opportunity to play more minutes when they shoot out Eichel and Reinhart and all those guys. When Granato got Thompson going, he put him down the middle. And I remember his reasoning. It was, he's a big player, but we don't need to force him into a box of being a power forward. It's not what he is. Sure, he's got size and he could be physical and he stands up for teammates and he could be that guy a little bit. But what does Tage Thompson want to be to his core? Go watch his highlight reel and show me what he wants to be. It's not Matthew Tkachuk goals. It's not Milan Lucic prime Bruins goals where he's powering his way to the net. He's out muscling a guy. He is making you look silly with dekes and stick handles, and he's on SportsCenter top 10 as much as any player in the National Hockey League. Thompson is a finesse player that also has the size to keep up physically, right? 6'7", and that's huge for him. His reach, his hands, his shot. He's a complete package offensively. Center was designed for him, when they put him there, to give him more open space. We don't want him confined along the wall. We want to give him that open space, give him more room to operate, and that worked. Over the course of 4 years, maybe he has learned things about the game since he's been a center and he's become more mature and grown into his body a little bit more. So Lindy moves him back to the wing, which he had done a little bit when injured, when Don Granato was the head coach. But that was about it. That when he rushed back 2 years ago, Middlestat played a little bit more at center and on that line, and Thompson played on the wing. But for the most part, he was a center. Lindy wants to put him on the wing because Jiri Kulich looks good at center. And the Sabres have some depth at center. Dylan Cousins is a center, and McLeod is a center, of course, and Krebs and Lafferty. They have so many options. Well, let's move Thompson back to the wing. And actually, I'm missing one part of this. Lindy did say originally part of it was the injury. Again, we put him on the wing because he was injured and we were taking a little bit off his plate, and then it looked really good, so they left it. And that is where I think we discovered that Thompson's rise to power in this league as a top scorer wasn't just about him playing center, because now he's capable of doing it at center and doing it on the wing. And if you're asking, well, do the numbers show anything different about whether he played center or whether he played the wing? Now, this is, by the way, one area of hockey stats that I would like to see take a next step, being able to categorize a player for when they play center, when they play wing. And I know the game's a little bit ambiguous, so it's kind of tough to figure that out. The best way that I did it was I looked at Thompson's numbers this year when he played with Jiri Kulich and the minutes that he didn't. Because for the most part, I know this wasn't all Kulich, but most of the time Thompson was on the wing this year, Kulich was his centerman. If you look at Thompson's most common line mates on the year, only J.J. Peterka and Alex Tuck outranked Jiri Kulich, and it wasn't by much. Kulich was third on that list, and Kulich played center almost entirely when Thompson was out there with him. So, what do the numbers show? Well, with and without Kulich, they both look great, and they're basically exactly the same. All of it, shot attempts and scoring chances and goals scored and expected goals and all the offensive metrics look better. The only guy really you see a massive difference with is Peterka. Peterka, you see a lot of chances and you see a ton given up when those two are out there together. With Kulich, you see a lot of solid numbers both with and without him. So I think that kind of shows that he was kind of the same player, whether he played center or whether he played the wing. So to me, now looking ahead, you can kind of do whatever you need to do with him. It's a great problem to have is what position does Thompson play? Well, tell me about my roster. That's the right question. Tell me about my roster. And right now, the Buffalo Sabres roster, I don't want to call it flush with centers, but they're good. They're fine. They're completely fine at center. They do not need Tage Thompson to play center. Going into next year, Josh Norris, Jiri Kulich, Ryan McLeod, Peyton Krebs, but whoever really for your fourth line center. You want to say it's Tyson Kozak. You want to say it's Sam Lafferty. I would prefer it's not Lafferty. Any of those guys. You're good at center. And mostly it's about 1, 2, 3. Norris, Kulich, McLeod. 1, 2, 3 down the middle. Not to even speak of Noah Ostlund, of course, who is a center, and he'll get here someday to play that position. And Consta Helenius is a center. He's played some wing in Rochester too. You got so many centers in the pipeline, and you've got 3 centers here right now, top 9 centers. You don't need Tage to play center. So I think beginning of next year, what I would do, and what I believe they are going to do, is put Tage Thompson on the wing. And I bet he probably stays there unless there's injuries. But this is the benefit. This is the good thing. Imagine there's an injury. It'll happen. One of those top 3 centers are going to get hurt at some point. And hell, I mean, I hope it's not going to happen to Josh Norris, but Norris is injury prone. There's no other way to put it right now. If something happened to Josh Norris at the beginning of the year, sure, you'd have to split Tage Thompson and Jiri Kulich up, but it wouldn't be that hard. You just bump Thompson to center, and now your centers are Thompson, Kulich, McLeod. The Sabres have the benefit right now going into next year of being capable of withstanding an injury at one of their 2 most important positions. The 2 most important positions in hockey are center and number 1 defenseman. And 2 years ago, when Thompson got hurt at center, Sabres really weren't that great at withstanding it. Well, this year, going into next year, this coming season, 25-26, I feel like the Sabres are capable of withstanding an injury to one of their top 2 centers. And that's a big plus, in my opinion. And all that's thanks to Thompson, developing into the player he has, being as versatile as he has. He's taken a little bit of a step defensively, still maybe a little bit below average on that front, but much better than he was before. He's become a leader in that locker room. He is certainly not somebody you question standing up for teammates. He's done that plenty over the years. Him and Dahlin, to me, are not too to worry about with that. So check, check, check. Tage Thompson checks all the boxes. If I'm being extremely nitpicky, I might say, well, again, get through a season without, missing games. And to be fair to him, he has played 70 or more games in 4 straight years. It's just he's had to play with injury a lot. The nitpicky thing I'd have about Thompson is, can he get a little bit more with the assists? Be a little bit better of a playmaker. 3 years ago, 22-23, he has 47 assists. The other 3 years since he's been a top-level player, 30 assists, 27 assists in this past season, 28 assists. And to be an elite player in the league, I could use a little bit more on that front. But I'm not in the mood to be extremely nitpicky. If you want to tell me he gives me 45, 50 goals and he's only around 30 assists, then that's obviously totally valuable and totally worth his contract that is still super cheap for who the player he is at just $7.1 million. If he was a football player or a basketball player and I were his agent, I would be pleading with him to hold out and demand a new contract because he is underpaid. He is a $10 million hockey player that makes $7 million. And the Sabres, they got a good contract on the books in that one. Not like they spend the money though that they make up for with that. When we come back, one more exit interview for today because I don't want to spend a whole show on this guy, Beck Malenstyn, a player that I've said before, no opinion of them whatsoever. Well, I've got one. And it's a little different than some of the other fourth liners. That's coming back here on Locked On Sabres. Today's episode of the Locked On Sabres podcast presented by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. So you can dive in then to hundreds and hundreds of titles, including EA Sports College Football 25, which I play. It's a great game. NHL 25, which I play as well. Call of Duty, of course, is easily for all those games. And you can stream your favorite shows on whatever streaming platform that you're looking for. So if you already got a console, Fire TV Stick 4K device, more affordable and easier to travel with than allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in and taking your console on the road. And man, if you play that college football game and you're in a dynasty, maybe with friends, like you got to have that thing being capable of being mobile. So check out Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Again, if you're just even looking for the streaming of it, it works great. And, it's got all the big apps and platforms for all your favorite shows. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller are required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, second generation, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, the first and second generation, and Fire TV Cube, the third generation. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with just a little bit of a deep dive on Sabre fourth liner Beck Malenstyn, who is not really a player that stands out all that much. He is somebody they invested in. I mean, in terms of a draft pick, they spent a second round pick to get him from Washington, which is still, I would say, a bit of a questionable trade, if I'm being kind to Kevyn Adams. You would never think a player like that would cost a second round pick, but second round picks are a little bit overrated. So whatever, right? The only moment I can think of from Beck Malenstyn that really made me upset, there weren't many that made me feel like, holy cow, look at this guy. The Colorado game in Colorado during the 13-game losing streak. And I believe that was another 3-goal lead blown because they blew 2 of them to Colorado. One at home that's kind of started it all, and then there was one in Colorado. And what I remember about that game in Colorado in January 3rd was the game. There were 20 seconds left. The Sabres are up 5-4. 5-4. It's still January 3rd. There's time to turn the season around. There's 20 seconds left. And Lindy called timeout, and he put out 3 forwards that I remember looking at the numbers. They hadn't played a shift together all season long. It was Cousins and Malenstyn leaves Zucker. So Malenstyn's out there, and he gets switched to the middle on the defensive coverage. So now he's playing center. And there's a chance for him to switch back with Cousins, and Malenstyn misses it. And then Malenstyn, who's in the middle, he kind of freezes, doesn't see his man, Jonathan Drouin. He doesn't react nearly quick enough to go pick him up. Drouin open shot in the slot, buries it, and the Avalanche tie the hockey game, and they go on to win. A play that cost them a game this year because of a defensive zone lapse by Beck Malenstyn, who is supposed to be a defensive specialist. And to be fair to him, that was one moment. And the rest of the season, the numbers show, at least what I like to use, again, Evolving Hockey, he did. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm putting the chart up right now. His Evolving Hockey card from this past season, 89th percentile defensively when it comes to goals above replacement. And a lot of that was his shorthanded defense. So, and you saw that, right? He was physical. He's not a bad skater. He's a pretty good poke checker. One thing, though, that I don't like about Malenstyn as a defensive player, because, again, this is something I think it's so under-talked about in the league. I will always do this as someone that talks about hockey. When you're talking about a player's defensive impact, I want to include how often they have the puck. Because every second you have the puck as a player, you're playing good defense. Because don't even worry about scoring. Don't think about scoring. Every second you have the puck, the other team can't score. By definition, that is great defense. And the one complaint I would have about Malenstyn, along with that entire fourth line, but he's the one they invested the most in for it, is they don't often have the puck. And they've had lines that have in the past that were bottom six lines. Remember the log line? Johan Larsson, Zemgus Girgensons, and Kyle Okposo. None of which were my favorite players, but I liked them as a line together, and they kind of earned that nickname. They were good defensively. But I always appreciated that their defense wasn't just what they did in their own end. It was they always had the puck. They'd work the walls in the offensive zone. Larsson was good at it. Okposo was good at it. So was Zemgus. And they would work the walls, and they just wouldn't let you have it, where you'd be chasing them for 90 seconds, a top six line. And by the time they got the puck, they're out of gas. They got to chip it in and go to the bench and change. And to me, that line, that Larsson line, with that result, hold the puck for 90 seconds. You don't have to get a scoring chance. They get the puck back, dump it in, make a change. You've won that shift. And I don't see that as much from the Malenstyn line. And he's obviously 1/3 of that. Usually it was Kozak. Sometimes it was Lafferty, Krebs, but he was kind of the main constant on that fourth line all year long. So not somebody I need to rush off the roster. If I'm ranking who I want back on their fourth line, he definitely outranks Sam Lafferty for me. And we'll get to that a little bit. But none of the numbers really look great on the overall for Beck Malenstyn on the season. In terms of what he did offensively, because Okposo scored 20 goals a couple years ago, and Zemgus would score 10, 15 goals once in a while. What did Malenstyn have? 4 goals and 6 assists. So really no chipping anything in for you offensively, not even as much as maybe Girgensons did. And by the way, I'm not saying they should have kept Girgensons. I was totally ready to move on from him. And he scored like 2 goals this year for Tampa. So they probably picked the right time to move on from him. But if you look at Malenstyn, there's the 4 goals and 6 assists. You could look at what some of these guys did in the regular seasons towards their advanced numbers. Expected goals for percentage on the season. For Beck Malenstyn, he ranked, just double checking here very quickly. Yeah, bottom 3 on the team, which I think anybody could have predicted. In fact, if you look at the worst lines for the Buffalo Sabres last year, I mean, they're almost all Malenstyn lines, which I don't think would be that surprising. So, not my favorite player, but he does some good things defensively. All right, that's going to do it for us today here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening to today's show. The Amherst game we'll talk more about tomorrow as they go for the sweep in Syracuse, and more playoff action, Toronto and Ottawa. A lot of reaction tomorrow to some playoff hockey, both in the AHL and the NHL. If you missed our visit, by the way, yesterday with Michael Leone, head coach of the Rochester Americans, be sure to check that out on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Reminder, Text Club, you want to sign up, join subtext.com/LockedOnSabres. And if you're looking for more NHL playoff talk, check out NHL Game Night, Locked On NHL Game Night. It's everywhere that you get your podcasts. After making us your first listen, make them your next listen as you get ready for the rest of the playoff action in the first round. Locked On NHL Game Night, available wherever you get your podcasts. We'll talk to you tomorrow here in the Locked On Sabres podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.